Welcome back to the NFL Pick Six Show, Week 2, Week 1 officially in the books. The Jon Snow, we know nothing slate is over. Now it's time for the overreaction slate, which will be fun as well too. Going to bring in two of the absolute best analysts in all the world. It's Rich Hribar, of course, you know him from Sharp Football Analysis, and we got John Daigle from 4 for 4 from BetSperts as well. Daigle, I was talking to Rich pre-show briefly, asking about Week 1. Let me ask you. I haven't had a chance. You just chimed in a second or so later. Did you survive? Was it profitable? We're here at Week 2. How did Week 1 treat you?
No, did not survive. Those aren't the kind of slates, to be honest, that I'm going to win when the chalk hits like that. So I wasn't fretting too much about it. I had the Saquon Barkley fade on for better or worse. I was trying to figure out which of those players, knowing that we knew where the ownership was hovering around, to fade. And the answer was not Saquon Barkley or Michael Pittman. So not a good first week, but I know how those things go. It's okay.
Yeah, Pittman was 5.5 on DK, one of the most popular receivers, and free square and cash, and it was a good decision point for tournaments. And you're running 1,000 times, and maybe it makes sense to not play him, but obviously he certainly paid off the salary.
The $5 million maker, for as large field as that tournament was, still had Pittman and Barkley in them. Really just a couple changes, like Antonio Gibson at single-digit percentage, things like that. You didn't even need Patrick Mahomes, although it helped. You didn't need him to take down large tournaments or small fields for that matter.
Is there anything from Week 1 that going into the season, all your prep, you feel like, I got that right, or anything you want to overreact to, or hey, maybe I'm just wrong on this? Any bold calls you want to make after Week 1, or it's just 1 week and not ready to flip out just yet?
No bold calls per se, but I think we got the Steelers offense right. I think we at least got that one pretty easy to fade.
Yeah, wait until they switch quarterbacks. I'm told that's supposed to be coming soon. We'll see. I don't know. Stay tuned for that. All right, let's move on. Well, I do want to ask Rich, same deal. How did we kind of talked about it briefly, but let it be known, or if you have any hot takes, anything that you feel justified about as far as your hot take going into the season, or something that really surprised you, or something where you're like, yeah, I was on this and nobody else was. Any big takeaway as far as Week 1?
Well, we all were on Michael Pittman, so everyone slapped themselves on the back. Everyone got that one right. The Steelers, everything that, and Najee got hurt, but everything about his situation, because he was a clear fade for me for redraft, and everything I feared about his situation came true. They didn't target the running backs out of the backfield. The offensive line still created no kind of space, and the offense is just going to be terrible. So, you tack an injury onto that. That looks like that's right. We were on Saquon, so, early. So, if we redrafted today, and I know it's only been 1 week, but, Saquon probably goes top 5, I'm assuming, if we shuffled up right now and did drafts. Their schedule layout is fantastic. We will talk about him, I am sure, again on the show, so I'll save it. But, he's a guy that I was in on real early. I will say I'm a little nervous about maybe a couple guys, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, Daigle knows I was off on, but, I would say I'd be pretty nervous about that second round, recoil right there.
You were off of him, but not for 8 touches to 15. That's especially how those touches came about. That's the concerning part.
But it's just 1 week. We're looking for Week 1 as the reveal, right? The reveal of some of these questions. What are the Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon usage going to be? What is, Travis Etienne, James Robinson going to be like? Things like that, and it's just, we start to calibrate as we move along, but it's only 1 week. We don't want to get too crazy and, head over skis or whatever, however the phrase that goes. But we're here, man. Week 2, we're going to start to stack information. And, as we start to stack information is when we start to get really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the goofiest stat I saw was when OJ Howard had 2 touchdowns on 6 routes run or something like that. Are people spending money? I'm not a season-long guy. Are people spending money on him in Fab? Is that happening, Daigle?
No, and FFPC bids come in later tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see how Kyle Phillips, Taysom, Jeff Wilson all play out, Zach Moss. The list goes on. Dontre Hilliard, Jalen Warren. We'll see how those play out. But really, I don't think there was anyone to break your bank for, honestly, in Week 1, even though Wilson will garner the largest bids.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I was going to get. How long is Mitchell out for? Do we know, or you're still kind of up in the air about that?
2 months, and their bye week is in Week 9, so we're projecting through Week 9, at least in Week 10.
If this is your first time watching the NFL Pick 6 show, if you're not aware how it goes down, we focus on the main slate, so we're not going to be talking about the Thursday night game. Would love to. That game was going to be a spectacular. Kansas City versus the Chargers should be a lot of fun. 2 Monday night games, we're not talking about that, as well as
all the
Sunday
good teams are off this slate.
Yeah, we're talking about a bunch of teams. It's funny. Daigle sends the list, and he always gives us the 3 games, 6 teams that we focus on. And like for starters, I'm like, we're just going to be hitting the AFC West all season long. I feel like that's going to be hitting a lot. Yeah. And then it's like, I don't know, Washington, Detroit made the board at all last year, but and Jacksonville, these are some weird teams. But that's kind of what we're stuck with. Big boy total as far as Arizona and the Raiders. That's the AFC West, and that's not surprising. And that's 51.5 as far as the total. Otherwise, there's some games in the high 40s, and there's some uneventful games down low. We'll touch on them as well. We're going to talk about our 3 main games we like from a stack perspective, all the perspectives. And then, of course, we'll run it back and talk about the fair players position by position in games that we did not focus on just yet. We'll talk about Thrive later on. Do appreciate Thrive for sponsoring the show. And do appreciate y'all watching us on the old YouTube. Hit that like button kindly. Subscribe, turn on those notifications. And so we got a lot of viewers last week, so we do appreciate it. But there was not a lot of comments in the comment section. And I was like, how can we get people to comment in the comment section?
We answered all the questions.
What? I'm prompting them right now. The hottest take. I want the hottest, most accurate take in the comment section. I'm going to go back and put your Twitter account there. So if you get it right, I want to be able to track you down. I'll hook you up with 1 week free of RotoGrinders Premium. I don't know if you guys can make stuff work for people too. I don't want to put it on you, but feel free to join in. But if you want to, I don't know what you're at liberty to give away, John or Rich, but by all means, I'm going to track the comments in the comment section. The hottest take we got in the comment section, most accurate combination platter. I'll get you 1 week free RG Premium. And again, put your Twitter account so in case you happen to get it right, I can track you down and hook it up. All right, we got anything else, boys? We're diving in. We're diving in, right, Rich?
Let's rock.
All right, 3-game slate. Well, no, 3-game slate. No. Here's the 3 main games we're going to be focusing on. The very first one, it's Washington. Yeah, let's do it. Washington at Detroit in a dome, 48.5 as far as the total. Washington's a 2-point dog here. Rich, are we concerned at all as far as Swift? We record this on a Wednesday night, if you guys are not aware. Swift missed practice on Wednesday. Typically, general rules, we don't care until Friday, right? I mean, I don't know how serious that is. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's something we'll monitor. I mean, it kind of came up today that he had an ankle injury. He kind of suggested that he was still going to play, so we'll keep tabs on it. Obviously, if he's going to carry that Q, people will be hesitant to use him, but we'll wait and see if he's out. That's the one drawback of doing this show on Wednesday. We get the first look, but then also we're flying blind on everything that happens because remember, it's the first week. Like last week was the first week. This is the first week after the games, and Wednesday practices, guys miss Wednesday practices all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if our guy Arthur Juan has ever practiced on a Wednesday in his career, just maintenance days. But you want us to look Thursday, Fridays when you want to see if guys start missing practices. So we'll follow some things with Swift. But obviously if he's out, then, that will open up, potential for Jamal Williams to be more than his, token vulture, stealing touchdowns from us. And we could have had a 40 burger from DeAndre Swift last week.
Oh man, Williams siphoning touchdowns. Craig Reynolds? Would he siphon from Williams if Swift was out? I
think they have Justin Jackson too. They added him, where he's been on the team and they just brought him up from the practice squad.
We'll talk obviously under the assumption that Swift is good to go. Obviously, for whatever reason, if he doesn't go, Jamal should step in and get a usage bump. Rich, where do you want to go first as far as Washington and Detroit?
I'll start with Washington because they were pretty good last week. Offense was good. I mean, Scott Turner got in his bag pretty early. I mean, they were doing a lot of creative things with not just Curtis Samuel, but Antonio Gibson can catch the football. Who knew, right? The guy that played former wide receiver could catch the football. And the interesting thing about Antonio Gibson, who led the team in receiving in week 1, was he still conceded all of his passing down and long distance work to J.D. McKissic. They were doing creative things on early downs with him in the passing game. Now, I don't know how static that's going to be because it's early down stuff, and I doubt we have another game where Terry McLaurin has a career low 10% target share. I definitely think that's something that won't be static. But, Detroit was a team we targeted last year weekly with running back play. I mean, literally every week. They allowed the most touchdowns to opposing running backs. And what do they do in week 1? They come out and just get blasted by running backs again. they give 3 touchdowns to Eagles running backs, 150 total yards. Miles Sanders is useful, and everyone's happy to have Miles Sanders again. So, I mean, Antonio Gibson's going to be walking into another spot. I doubt he catches 7 of 8 targets again, but it's a really another nice spot for him to have an opportunity to score touchdowns, because all their touchdowns were passing last week, and just take advantage of this Lions kind of front that was still exploitable, to the fullest last weekend.
John, jump in here. What are your thoughts as far as Gibson and that Washington offense as a whole?
I agree with practically everything Rich said. For Gibson to also handle 82% of the running back touches in a competitive game script, maybe that was expected, but out touching McKissick 21-6 overall is fairly huge, especially on a slate where we don't have much value. Well, we don't have cheap plays. We have values that should be priced higher, but we don't have many cheap plays right now. So Gibson may sneak in, especially if everyone tries to get up to Jonathan Taylor, who we'll talk about later. And people will naturally play Christian McCaffrey for better or worse, just trying to be the person who's ahead of his bounce back. So as we look at the entire slate, I think Gibson's a great value. And we need Washington to push the pace a tad, but they showed us in 35 points against the Eagles, they can do so whether Jared Goff helps out or not, because at least last week he didn't help out, but they'll still push the pile and hopefully help us out on Washington's side of the ball.
Yeah, the best thing about Wentz, especially in week 1, is you got the best of both worlds, because Wentz will give you a couple that puts the other team in the game, but then it keeps the game flow going, right? Like you never get like one-sided. So it was, Wentz kind of helped us out last week, get a lot more offense from Washington side.
Not a lot of sentences start out with the best thing about Wentz.
He was great last week. I think he's going to be good again. I mean, this Lions defense was, bad. I think Wentz, like, especially in season long, like, I would play him over Tom Brady this weekend for sure. I think I would stream him. There's a couple other guys I think are better, like Derek Carr, but I think Wentz is in another really good spot. Detroit was 22nd in completion rate allowed last year. They were 31st in yards per pass attempt, 31st in touchdown rate. And Jalen Hurts, came out and threw for just under 8 yards per pass attempt. And Jalen Hurts he's the dude that we talked about, Swift, same game. I mean, he got tackled at the 1 yard line on his own that led to a Miles Sanders touchdown right afterwards. Dallas Goedert got tackled on the 1 yard line that led to a Boston Scott touchdown. And then there was he got tackled again on the 1 yard line on a scramble that led to the Kenny Gainwell touchdown. So, I mean, we could have 3 more Jalen Hurts touchdowns in that game.
A few of those running back carries on the one were also RPOs that he just handed off to. Sanders in particular got that one. So, yeah, Hurts could have exploded. For Washington, it's interesting because Rich already noted McLaurin's career low target share, and you would think that where and who McLaurin eats from would be Jahan Dotson, given that their ADOTs basically overlap. Jahan Dotson was at 16. Terry McLaurin was at 18 at the deep threat. Curtis Samuel probably doesn't lead the team in targets again and doesn't have the sexy deep threat as the others do with just literally 1 yard ADOT. But at the same time, that ADOT comes along because they were concertedly scheming him touches. That's why he had 11 targets. That's why he had 4 carries, because he's clearly a player they want to be involved in this offense. So I think there are just numerous ways to go in DFS, especially in a week where I don't like to chase one of the highest scoring quarterbacks from the week prior, but maybe it does give us a good reason, since we know the field is going to be on Trey Lance for his potential bounce back spot. And you can get really creative given everything we've said with Washington's offense and lineups.
Speaking of creativity, can you pair Wentz with Gibson? Is that something you're willing to do? Like, a lot of times, you obviously want to pair your quarterback with your receiver, but if Gibson is going to catch the same amount of passes, get the same amount of usage there, and of course he's got some, he can do some stuff in the run the ball as well. Is that something you consider, John, or is that not necessary?
I don't think so, because I'm not saying you can't do it, but the narrative we would be painting for that, or for me if I play Wentz, is negative game script, and then that would thus lead to J.D. McKissick being on the field. Because remember, we still have last year's evidence through week 12 before McKissick got injured. He was averaging a career high 11.5 points, DraftKings points per game. Like, he is the player they will still put on the field, we assume so anyways, over Gibson if they're in that situation. So I wouldn't pair them personally. I would just hope that Gibson stays in because it's within 1 score throughout the entire time.
Rich, you're always talking about your boy, the Sun God, Amon-Ra.
Yeah.
Is this another Amon-Ra St. Brown spot for you?
Absolutely. It's a great spot to play Sun God until people start putting respect on his name. I mean, the dude had another 8 catches. He's had 8 or more catches now in 7 straight games going back to last year. He had another 32% of team targets. He's had 30% of the team targets in 7 straight games. He scored a touchdown in 5 straight games going back to last year. And he's playing again after he's playing a Washington team that after they were 29th in points allowed to opposing slot receivers last season, they come out and just get dusted by Christian Kirk in week 1. So they give up 126 yards and 8 catches to Jacksonville wide receivers from the slot. So, it's another great spot for the Sun guy. Nobody played him last week. And and I saw on multiple shows, we brought him up. I saw Ian Hartitz and Dwayne McFarland brought him up, and his ownership was still trash. Dude, on FanDuel, he was 6%, in small field stuff, which was crazy.
I think he had a weird price. He was in kind of a dead zone spot. I think that's what the issue was.
The problem is he's not a dead zone. He's a wide receiver 1. The dude catches 8 passes every game. He's getting Boku targets. And we talked about him being a problem. The Lions weren't going to go back and funnel targets to TJ Hawkinson. It wasn't going to be a thing. And that's what happened. And, you add DJ Shark to the mix too, and the game script helped. So we would love to see Detroit kind of fall behind. They're kind of a sketchy favorite this week anyways.
Yeah.
So, this game should be, I think, tight.
Yeah. 3-point favorite. No, 2-point favorite as of right now, what I'm seeing as far as Detroit. Team total pretty solid at 25, just over 25 and change. 48.5 as far as the total on the board. Is there much to get excited about, Rich? Again, it could be Shark again. He could be fine, but there's no reason to think that. I don't think there's any reason to think it's a spectacular play beyond St. Brown on Detroit when it comes to the receivers, the pass catchers.
Yeah, Shark's basically gonna, he's gonna be that volatile option, right? Kind of throwback Marvin Jones-ish, but he was on the field a ton. Basically he ran the same number of routes as Amon-Ra, so he was out there, and he did have a 22% team target share, which was solid. Got a touchdown over big play Slay. But yeah, he's gonna be kind of volatile. I don't know how many doubles you're gonna run, with Detroit, because we're probably not gonna play golf. But this game has a natural stack side where you can get kind of cute with Wentz and run him back with the Sun God or Swift, and you can just have a natural mini and just play the Sun God and Gibson if you want just a little isolated mini.
I like that route much better. I like the sound of that as opposed to playing off or Wentz and starting. They can get there, of course, but I'm kind of an elitist when it comes to the quarterbacks. So I want starters. I want quarterbacks with legs, and neither one of these guys have legs, and their arms are both kind of sketchy too. And I know there are routes, obviously, and they're cheap. We do live in the world of salary cap, but
Golf finished with the lowest on target rate of any quarterback who started in week 1. And so although Chark did get there because that deep touchdown also tied for the second most targets, 20 plus yards downfield last week, we are still on prayer yards watch, given that, everything just seems to be declining annually with Jared Goff still.
But we saw with Wentz, the one thing that he kind of had with this transition to Taylor Heineke that objectively looked on paper as a massive upgrade was him throwing the ball downfield. He was a top 5 quarterback and on target rate on throws 30 yards or further downfield last year with the Colts. And we saw that immediately in week 1 kind of pay dividends for Terry McLaurin, a guy who's never gotten on target deep targets in his career. Now we just need more targets to come.
That throw to McLaurin was hot too.
Yeah.
That was a bucket dropping it in. It was a dime.
By the way, I just realized I might have goofed when I was talking about the comment section. I see the live chat is pulled up right now. What's up, chat? We appreciate you guys watching us live. And again, kindly hit that like button, do subscribe, and hit those notifications, get them on. But when I was saying the hottest, most accurate take, I'm not going to go back and read the chat after the show. In the actual, you got to do it after the show. In the comment section on the YouTube, people are firing off some hot takes in there, and maybe some are good. I don't know, but hit the copy and paste and throw it up.
Listen, let's get Steve behind the scenes. I don't know if he's even working. He's probably watching DFS lineup, so they'll pop some of those up here, man. Let's see if we can get some involvement going on the show.
While we use StreamYard, we have comments now you could put on the screen.
Producer Steve is having himself a rough day, just like your boy is. Steve's a big Mets fan, and you guys don't care about MLB DFS, but the most popular pitcher in MLB DFS on a Wednesday night, David Peterson, got his face fully punched in, got 1 out and 6 earned runs, and he's upset that his Mets, are just getting shellacked. I assume they still are, and I'm upset because I lost a lot of American dollars. That's unfortunate, but hey, it's DFS. We'll wake up tomorrow. We'll fire some more bullets. In the chat, by the way, John, they're talking about Curtis Samuel, Undertaker.gif, 11 targets last week. Is that sustainable? Do we care? Are we excited about Curtis Samuel in the year 2022?
It's, as I mentioned, the shallow A dot, I understand, is not something that people want to chase, but the way they were scheming him targets, the way he's involved in this offense, I think he could practically take away from Jahan Dotson weekly. It's probably going to be volatile, but man, to get those targets and carries like a Chase Claypool almost, he offers a high floor for sure. I'll be curious to see where his ownership comes in.
I don't think people want to play him, right?
Probably not.
I'm sorry, talking about Samuel or Dotson?
Samuel.
Okay.
Maybe recency bias. They want to play Samuel. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe I just don't want to play Samuel.
I mean, when I look at McLaurin's target share last week, the most natural place I go is the 19 total targets Gibson and Samuel got combined, and saying that those are probably not going to be as static week to week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some are going to be delegated to Terry's way.
But Samuel, people forget, like, he's only 26 years old, and the last season he played, that was a full season because he basically didn't play all last year. He led all wide receivers in touches in the NFL. So I mean,
forget.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, and they gave him good money. I mean, the Washington has a legit set of skill makers. Like, they have good players. It's just we're counting on Wentz weekly to have some level of consistency, but they have legit playmakers.
We got anything else here, boys? Anything else worth focusing on, or shall we move on? We're moving on. Game 2, Arizona and the Raiders, 51.5 as far as the total. Raiders, 5.5-point favorites. Arizona was an absolute disaster week 1. Not certain if they're going to have more back this week as far as their receiving core. Of course, Hopkins is going to be out. Kirk is still gone. Chase Edmonds is still gone. They got absolutely shellacked there by Kansas City. I'll throw this to you, John. You know, this should be, on paper, the biggest shootout of the week. Will it play out that way?
I don't know. It's such an interesting game because, and maybe not in the way that people think. I guess I'll start with the Raiders side of the ball. Oh, no, I'll go start with Kyler Murray because the Raiders only rushed 4 defenders on 43% of their snaps and still recorded the 4th highest pressure rate of week 1 against the Chargers O-line we consider to be significantly stronger than Arizona's. At least last year, Murray dumped it off for the 7th highest completion rate under pressure. But in week 1, with Zach Ertz hobbled, Marquise Brown streaking downfield, and this offense, for whatever reason, being built around Greg Dortch. Like, Murray was horrible. He was 4 of 13 for 2 yards per attempt under duress. There's just nowhere for him to go right now. And so maybe it's the same situation because it doesn't sound like right now we're going to get Rondale Moore. Zach Ertz still ran a route on over 85% of drop back. So he was available, although he was injured. But there are lots of question marks with this Cardinals offense. Lots.
Yeah. I'll throw it to you, Rich, as far as let's knock out the Cardinals first. And do we expect them to bounce back? They should bounce back, right? Theoretically, in a dome as well. How do you feel about the Cardinals? They can't be any worse, I suppose. We'll give them that.
I mean, maybe they can. I mean, this is still another spot where when you look at all the missing pieces the Cardinals have on both sides of the football, I mean, you're still counting on like Cliff Kingsbury and Vance Joseph to coax the most out of both of these units. And those have been tough spots to like count on. Like, it's been really tough to count on that. It's not just a 1-game sample either. Like, when Kyler lost DeAndre Hopkins last year, the splits were just night and day, and it happened again, in week 1. There's just not a lot of like really great surrounding talent. The offensive line is bad. It's really tough. And, it's kind of baked into that. They only have a 23-point implied total.
And it's sinking too, for a good reason.
Like, it's kind of baked in that like they're not a sure thing, and there's a reason for it. I mean, obviously, I think we can still play guys like Marquise Brown because when we get on the other side, I have pretty good confidence that the Raiders are going to bounce back, especially against this defense because the Cardinals. I mean, we talked about it last week when we talked about the Chiefs. I mean, they're just missing so many starters and not good starters to begin with. So the next man up is even worse. And they did absolutely nothing to slow down the Chiefs. That's fine. You don't give up any of the Chiefs. But going back to last year now, they've allowed multiple passing touchdowns in 8 straight games. They've allowed 20 or more Draftkings points to 7 of the past 8 quarterbacks they faced going into last year. It's just a great spot for the Raiders to kind of get right. And Derek Carr and his pricing, wheels up. I mean, I think he's the one guy we talk about taking a quarterback that maybe doesn't have legs. I mean, I would absolutely anticipate Derek Carr to push for 3 bills in this game.
Yeah, I mean, he's cheap enough where you don't necessarily need all the stuff on the ground either. And he does kind of have to get there with cracking the 303 or 304, but you
Or
can.
the tuds.
But the other part, though, Rich, is like neither one of you guys sound like you're terribly convinced that Arizona is going to hang.
But Arizona. The cool thing about Arizona, and we saw it again last, they're just going to run a ton of plays. The cool thing is that they're still going to play fast. They might not go anywhere, but they're going to run a lot of plays.
And if it's, I wouldn't say competitive, but if they're within 2 scores, they showed us James Conner staying out there. Benjamin didn't touch the ball until the second drive of the third quarter after the Chiefs scored and built a 30-7 lead. Until that point, it was all James Conner. All 6 of his targets came in the first half. So they showed us as long as it's not that much of a blowout, they'll just leave him out there. He'll be out there to burn with Kyler Murray for the entire game. So that makes him an interesting player as well.
I mean, Dortch is only 3.6 on DraftKings. He ran the same amount of routes as Hollywood Brown. He was excellent in the preseason, too. This dude balled in the preseason. And the Raiders allowed 10 catches for 135 yards to Charger slot receivers last week. So, he's super cheap. I mean, I bet he ends up being pretty popular as the week goes along and Rondale Moore is officially out, which he's trending towards already early on.
Yeah, you thought about Arizona keep trying. They got a garbage touchdown from Marquise Brown, who was chalky last week. He got a garbage touchdown and he was still bad. It was kind of sort of salvage time, but it was still his stat line was still not very good. The Raiders, man, the tricky part is I don't want to play Josh Jacobs. So I'm curious if I want to play Devontae Adams, obviously everyone wants to play Devontae Adams. He looks like he's just an incredible spot this week. Him versus Kupp is an interesting conversation. Kupp also in a game that's projected to blow out. Well, I shouldn't say this one's projected to blow out, but 5 or 6 points as far as the line. Where do you want to start in that, Rich? Do you want to talk about Josh Jacobs, who nobody wants to talk about, I don't think, or Devontae Adams? Dealer's choice.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts, I still think, with, Arizona's defense and the state they're in. Obviously, we talked about last week, they weren't going to have Antonio Hamilton. They didn't have Trayvon Mullen. We'll see if he's going to play. That's 2 starting cornerbacks that are down. Isaiah Simmons looked like he should just retire last week. This dude was getting shadow realmed by every single, Chiefs player that he tried to guard, transitioning to safety. They didn't have J.J. Watt. We'll see if he's going to play. Obviously, they don't have Chandler Jones and Jordan Hicks on the team anymore. There was not one element of the game defensively that they showed up for. The Chiefs got a first down on almost half of their offensive plays. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. It's just rough, man. I mean, they're going to end. Vance Joseph was just hell, I know we can't do anything, and decided to just blitz Patrick Mahomes on 52% of the dropbacks. He was like, you know what, screw it. We're not going to stop him anyways. I might as well send as many dudes as I can and just pray. And Patrick Mahomes was the only quarterback through multiple touchdowns against the blitz last week. And he threw all 5 of his touchdowns against the blitz. So, I mean, no one ever blitzes Patrick Mahomes like that. Vance Joseph said, he was just what else are we going to do? We might as well just send everybody. Just keep spamming, big nickel, linebacker blitz, over and over again.
And that's what I've been working under the assumption is if all these defenders are injured again, they're just going to send the house yet again at Derek Carr. And Carr wasn't Patrick Mahomes against the blitz last year. No one is, but still respectable 64% completion rate, 9 yards per attempt against the blitz. And we don't expect them to get there even in blitzing, unlike the Chargers last week, who did. The offensive line for the Raiders is a concern and will be a concern moving forward. Basically lived up to all the issues Rich discussed last week. Derek Carr doesn't throw picks. He threw multiple. He doesn't take sacks. He took 5. But again, this Cardinals defense just doesn't have the talent right now to hang in. So, yeah, I mean, the Raiders offense is where I'm looking.
John,
I would bump Josh Jacobs up in season long, which I know a lot of people don't obviously he's not on any of my rosters, but you feel good about getting him in it. If you have him on your roster, if you're not going to play him this week, then you're just never going to play him. But at DFS, he's still pretty tough to play.
Okay, I was waiting for somebody to sell me on him, and I don't want.
I mean, if never if not this week, then never, because the Chiefs just steam you got Isaiah Pacheco just coming in and just ripping runs for 10 yards a pop at some point. CEH was really the guy who got back to treading water last week. The Chiefs lineup with CEH. If there ever was a week for Josh Jacobs, it'd be this. He's typically just the kind of guy I'm not going to pay for, because we saw with Josh McDaniels in week 1, like it's compartmentalized. He's not going to catch the football. Like he's just not going to be involved as a pass catcher. I mean, he only ran 17 pass routes last week. He did run for almost 6 yards per carry. But just you're not going to get any type of catches out of him. So you have to get touchdowns out of him. And any type of running back where we're talking about from a DFS stance, like has to score, maybe not 1, but 2 touchdowns. Like it gets kind of sketchy to play, but I will monitor and see how popular he is, I guess, throughout the week.
I think it's going to be a week-to-week thing, even though we're talking about this week in particular for Jacobs, because if you look at this running back slate, it's just hard to fit him in because yet again, there are stars and terrific matchups again. We'll get to JT, but again, the Christian McCaffrey bounce back, Saquon Barkley arguably being too cheap on DraftKings in particular, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon against a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys college offense. There are just a lot of studs at the top to pay up for again.
I'm just taking a peek at the chat. I think we're getting trolled. Burkhead or CEH in season long? I mean, is that? I guess it's probably a real question. I guess, right? Is that a real question, Rich?
I mean, listen, we're just gonna keep playing dudes that are on the Chiefs and not on the Texans.
Okay,
we're real simple about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of sort of where I'm at as well too. How concerned are we about Pierce? By the way, Burkhead outplayed him. John, you probably have the stats. 70% of the snaps more, or it was 70% to 30 or something like that. And it seemed like Pierce just basically went away at the end of the game when it was close. It's a 1 week thing, and you never really know. But Pierce is the young guy, and Burkhead's been around forever. He's got to be older than 26, I think.
Well, Burkhead ran 25 routes to Pierce's 9, and also was the down and distance back. 11 third down snaps to Pierce's 1, but we still have this Lovie Smith coach speak for whatever the hell that adds up to, and getting Pierce more touches. So we'll see. You would imagine a player of his talent eventually overthrows Burkhead, but it's probably not this week, but we'll see.
Just checking out his prices: 4.7 on DK, 5.6 on Fanduel. Pierce, who just was a mega bust in week 1 in Denver. Not
in a game that they were up 20-3 through 3 quarters. That was the layout. You got the run out that you needed for Damian Pierce chalk week or where, and he didn't play.
Rich, what do you got as far as Renfro and Waller outside of you can play them?
Yeah, I mean, it's, Renfro was one of these guys that, when you go back to it last year in his breakout season, had really kind of, cattywampus splits with Darren Waller in and out of the lineup. So then with them adding Devontae Adams, it was always kind of a concern. Well, how much just work is there, Renfro going to get? And, you see it's just 1 week, but, 3 of 6 targets, 21 yards. Not really sexy, but, we did talk about Juju last week. I mean, Arizona just being a team that was, Marco Wilson being one of the guys that was just really rough in defending the slot. And, Chiefs wideouts come out and have, 7 for 104 in the slot. Now, Devontae Adams also moonlighted, though, in the slot, too. They kind of moved him around, and he just, soaked up all of those targets. Because Devontae Adams is still really good at football. It doesn't matter that he's not playing with Aaron Rodgers. He still is with a functional offense. And then Waller was back still. I mean, Waller, miraculously got a new agent and a new contract and is down here, running 30 yards down the seam and catching balls. I mean, he averaged 20 yards per catch in week 1. We saw what Travis Kelce did to Isaiah Simmons last week. So, I mean, he's in play too as well.
Rich, all things being equal, forget, your lineups and ownership and all that kind of stuff and who you're pairing them with. Who do you want this week? Do you want Adams or do you want Kupp as your top receiver?
Oh, snaps. I would say Kupp, and maybe I'll save it for when we get there. I have Kupp actually in my official rankings. Just, I have him 1 this week, which, obviously I don't think you can go wrong with any of the top 3 guys, but all signals point to still being a massive Kupp week. And I'm curious to see how many people play Allen Robinson, take that bait at that price.
So I think that's we'll talk about it when we get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, try not to overreact on stuff in week 1.
There's definitely a hook in the water on Allen Robinson. Let's see who bites it.
I'm just glad we don't have Justin Jefferson on the slate because I nearly had an aneurysm trying to sift through Adams and Jefferson last week. It was very, very tough.
It's funny as we open, Thursday night and Cup goes absolutely nuclear. He has the 15 targets and everyone is taking their initial victory lap because it's what we do on island games. And it's like, oh, all you idiots were taking Cooper Cup behind Justin Jefferson. Oh, what kind of analyst was this? And then Justin Jefferson comes out on Sunday and goes absolutely bonkers too. And it's just like, this is what happens. You reap what you sow. No one's an idiot, man. It's fantasy football. And
they were all good. Like the top five receivers. Everyone lapped the top 5 receivers. Congratulations.
Big wide receiver 1 week.
Like, hey, I told you that Jefferson's good and I told you Cup's good. Like that, these are known things, right? I mean, I'm sure there's more context to that, I imagine, but is that what people are doing?
Get on Twitter more, Dean, and you will see that people still want to be right about a good player, I guess.
And CMC did not combust. I was told on first contact.
CMC was not good.
Well, I was told he would just explode. His quad would blow out, or I don't know. So he would pull something. He survived. He wasn't very good, but he didn't get
CMC hurt. And Saquon are still not hurt.
Yeah. But if they did get hurt, there'd people be victor. I knew it. I knew that guy was injury prone. John, Rich, got anything else as far as this game?
Nah.
We are moving on. Third game of our 3 featured games, and then after that, again, we're going to run back and give our favorite plays, position by position, players that are not in the 3 games that we're featuring. The Colts, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. We're looking at a 45.5 total. This was a late swap too, Daigle. You must have saw something you liked because you swapped the game out. You said, you know what? I really want to talk about Trevor Lawrence or somebody in this game. 45.5 as far as the total. Colts on the road, 3.5 point favorites. I will throw it to you, John. Who did you really want to talk about this game?
Actually, I started researching the Texans side of that Broncos matchup, and I was like, "Oh, actually, I don't want to talk about this game." I was
actually wondering what you were going to do with that Texans side.
I got really excited when I researched the Broncos side, and then I got to the Texans. I was like, "Oh no, actually, we don't want to touch this game." I'll talk about Russell Wilson when we get to the positions, though. But Trevor Lawrence, it's interesting because even though he was under pressure at the league's second highest rate and didn't perform too well in the box score with just over 6 yards per attempt, 57%, just over 6.5 yards per attempt, the Jaguars still averaged 6.2 yards per play. And we think this is a game where, one, the Colts left yards and points on the board, but also played faster. Maybe we should have expected that since Ryan yelled about it throughout the offseason, but still threw at the league's 6th highest rate, or still ran the 6th fastest pace in between plays. And so we expect them to pick the Jaguars up with them. And so, yeah, I think the Jaguars offense and this game in particular, the Colts, the 8th highest team total on the board right now. I can definitely see myself playing some players from this game in particular. And again, it's better than the Broncos and Texans.
Fair enough. Rich, I will yield to you wherever you want to go. If you want to talk about the Jags, you want to talk about the Colts, what's most interesting in that first thing out the gate as far as this game?
Yeah, I think the Jags are one of these teams early on in the season, and we can take advantage because they're going to be more competent while still having a lot of issues, which can make up for a lot of fun games like we had last week when they play Washington. Like Trevor Lawrence has a better baseline group of wide receivers. And we've seen that even when he is bad and inaccurate, like the receivers are still going to be functional. They're like, this isn't Laviska Shenault out there and then Laquan Treadwell and these other vagabonds they're trotting out and throwing passes to. Like they're actually able to get production. And Lawrence still made enough mistakes. I mean, he had 2 high school level touchdowns. One to Travis Etienne on a wheel route and one to Zay Jones in the end zone. Etienne returned the favor later when he just swatted a ball down like a defender when he could have just caught it and walked in the end zone. But Lawrence is still pretty sketchy. And, we're going to need him to play a little bit better. But it looks like they're still at least going to be functional and be able to put up some points and move the football a little bit better than they did last year when they were just dead in the water. Remember, there was a 10-week span last year where Lawrence didn't even throw a touchdown, which was absolutely bonkers. But the defense still looks deplorable. I mean, obviously, when you see a guy like Carson Wentz just be the QB3 on a week, your defense probably isn't that hot. So Matt Ryan, like Daigle said, they were aggressive. They just didn't cash in drives, and like Denver in week 1, they just didn't cash it in. I would bank on them being able to cash some of these drives in. I know our buddy Dan Box probably listening to it, and he knows he's probably screaming in his head, the Colts never play good in Jacksonville. And he's right. They're 1-7 on the road in Jacksonville since 2015, 0-8 against the spread. The Jags always play them tough. Obviously, you go back to last year, they cost them that playoff spot, when they lose that game in Jacksonville. But yeah, this is a game I think that could be interesting as long as everyone's kind of healthy on the Colts side, because the Jags look like they're going to be more competent. Like they're going to be like the AFC Lions, right? That's what they look a lot like.
That's a good call. Yeah. They should be able to hang in games, and they're going to yield a bunch of fantasy points as well. Of course, Taylor is a good spend, a good play. It's just a matter of lineup construction. Any takeaways, you guys? I'll ask you, John. Takeaways as far as Etienne and the usage and his snaps with him and the trying to think of the other guys in the backfield. Robinson in the backfield there for Jacksonville. Is it basically what we expected as far as his usage?
I didn't expect James Robinson to look like this. We expected him to poach early down carries, but he was dancing inside the 10-yard line too. Looked honestly at 90%, which again, not what I expected. But not only to out carry Etienne 11-4, but handle the team's only RB touches inside the 10 and 5 yard lines and run just 7 fewer routes than Etienne. We still saw Etienne be the third down back, but overall, this is practically Robinson's backfield.
And you expect that basically going forward? I know Etienne had the fumble, right? And maybe I don't know if that was a casualty of that as far as the usage or not. You think going forward, at least for the near future, we're expecting Robinson to be lurking inside the 5, inside the 10?
Pretty sure Doug Peterson even mentions as much. He commented that basically what they saw from Robinson is what they expected. And so I would think he just continues earning a larger role. I don't think I'll get there in this game since I'm basically banking on, as Rich said, the Colts moving the ball with ease and then Jaguars firing back through the air. And so I think it's more about playing Christian Kirk because the game didn't change for Gus Bradley despite leaving the Raiders. Like, he led the league with 60% of the Raiders' defensive snaps from cover 3 last year, and the Colts led the league in week 1 with 67% of their snaps from cover 3. And we know that Kirk recorded a team high 68% of his targets with the Cardinals last year against zone coverage, and then pretty much picked up right where he left off with a team high 8 of his 12 targets against zone coverage in week 1. As Rich said, was also expected to burn the team's slot cornerbacks on the other side of the ball anyhow. So I think Kirk is a pretty easy run back stack here with the Colts offense.
You agree with that, Rich? The top run back for Jacksonville, the obvious one, I guess, is probably Kirk. Is there anybody else you can make an argument for? Zay Jones, they paid him. Marvin Jones he's still in the league. Anything else to get excited about as far as this Jacksonville offense, especially the receivers as run backs?
I mean, definitely Kirk. I mean, Zay Jones was there. I mean, he was with it. He had 9 targets. He ran the same amount of routes as Christian Kirk. He had a free touchdown that Lawrence just missed him on. But yeah, I would absolutely just rather play Kirk. I mean, we saw him get targeted heavily per route run in the preseason. He comes out, gets heavily targeted per route run in week 1. It's going to be a zone-based defense. Yeah, it definitely seems to be the guy to kind of, run it back here with Pittman, and we'll see who's active, as well in this game. And the Colts are coming in a little bit limpy. You saw DeVorest Buckner popped up on the injury report. They probably aren't going to have Shaq Leonard still for one more week at least. Alec Pierce went into concussion protocol today, which is insane because the hit that Alec Pierce took was absolutely devastating. It was one of those football hits, and he went on concussion protocol today, not even during the game or afterwards.
John Taylor or CMC? Everything else being equal, who do you want?
I mean, Taylor, I guess the fact he handled 91% of their running back carries shouldn't come as a shock, but to open the year with 35 touches, 7 targets for a 14% target share, the second highest in the team behind Michael Pittman, and even out snap Hines on 10-5 on third down, good grief. Taylor probably should maybe even be more expensive, in the 10Ks. So I think this week it'd be Taylor for me.
Yeah, they were down 20-3, and that was set up to be like a Nyheim Hines special.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was all Jonathan Taylor, and he ran 12 more pass routes than Nyheim Hines too, and he got to get a little peppering of targets. I mean, now the Colts aren't going to run 90 offensive plays though. Again, just same thing when we talk about the Bengals. The Bengals aren't going to run 100 offensive plays.
5 quarters
again this week. Getting a full, because both those games got full overtimes. And that's the other thing too, is historically teams that travel after full overtimes have been like terrible, against the spreads. They kind of no-show the following week, which rolls into like kind of like that.
Oh boy.
Like I said, the potential trap spot. So one thing to monitor. Obviously, you on paper, you're not going to like run away from the Bengals or the Colts at all, based on their opponents. But just one thing to keep in mind.
1 o'clock game in Jacksonville. I thought you were ready to make a bold call. Are you saying the Jags are going to win? Make DB happy, man. Tell him the Jags are going to win.
Oh no, I can't, man. I'm just saying that I'm not going to bet on the Colts side either, though.
Fair enough. It's a stay away.
Yeah,
which is almost kind of an endorsement of Jacksonville. It's kind of an endorsement. It's a stay away. All right, going to run back, give our favorite plays position by position. Before we do that, we do want to tell y'all about Thrive, the sponsor of the show. Join in on the fantasy prop action this NFL season with Thrive Fantasy. It's an easy-to-play, no salary cap style contest that revolves around over-under style player props. Each prop has a fantasy score associated with the prop. The riskier the prop happens to be, the higher fantasy score you get. And vice versa, it's true as well. Like if it's an easy one, if it's kind of a layup, they might only give you like 70 points. The more points, the higher you are in the standings. They had a big boy contest, and there was some overlay with that contest in week 1 as well. They also have another big contest as well. I'm just pulling up the all right, $150,000 guaranteed, $30,000 up top, $25 to enter. We talked about this last week, Rich. Like, remember we were saying like the Zeke Elliott, and if you bet under 1.5 touchdowns, you get like 60 points. But 60 points is kind of worthless. Like you got to run the table basically. You got to go 10. There's different contests and different things you can do on the site, but I'm just kind of focusing on this main one. But basically, they give you 20 props, and you got to take 10 sides on the 20 props. I know I sent them to you guys, and I guess the 60 points are useful. But in theory, I don't think game theory wise, like I'm going to even be attacking that. Like this week, we have David Montgomery. You can bet under 1.5 touchdowns and get 55 fantasy points, or I guess that's helpful. That's better than an L, but you kind of sort of like in these big contests, you kind of got to go 10-0 or at least 9-1 to get yourself a nice cash. So I don't know if that's something I'm looking at. Did you get a chance, Rich, to kind of take a peek as far as some of these over-unders? Anything kind of jump out for you? I got one that I like, but I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, obviously, it's not a Zeke Elliott one, but, the very first one right off the page, Tom Brady, 275.5 passing yards. The under is 105. He's played 5 games against the Saints as he's joined the Bucs, and he's thrown for over 239 yards just once. So like that's a pretty big gap. Obviously the Bucs are all still kind of banged up. They lost another offensive lineman last week in Donovan Smith, who looks like he probably won't play. Godwin's going to be out. Russell Gage, still kind of coming back from that hamstring. Mike Evans is kind of dealing with something, whatever, during the week. But I would say that's a pretty strong 105, like right off rip. Right below it, you've got Alvin Kamara, who pass blocked on a career high number of snaps last week, 68.5 rushing yards. He has rushed for 2.5 yards per carry the past 2 years against the Buccaneers. He's dealing with a rib injury. I like that. We talked about Wentz. Two passing touchdowns for Wentz. Give them to me.
Well, how many points do you get for it? The 100's like the break-even point.
It's even. It's one. The Wentz one is 100 over, 100 under. It's 1.5 touchdowns.
Okay, yeah, I can get behind that one. John, did you get a chance to take a peek at this, and you have anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, Rich took one of mine, but I'll piggyback off Brady and note that Mike Evans' last 6 matchups against Marshawn Lattimore, he hasn't gone over 50 yards, let alone 65.5. It was a different offense. Like Brady actually led the league in time from snap to throw, and so maybe that helps Evans get fed targets and he gets there from Yak, but that's not something I'll bet on. I'll gladly bet under Mike Evans. And then I will go under Baker Mayfield. Now, this one's volatile. I'm going to screw up our bet slip here because Aaron Robinson is likely out. Their starting cornerback on the boundary is missing this one. We don't know about Olajari and Kayvon Thibodeau just yet, but we do know that Wink Martindale sent the most blitzes in the preseason. He sent the 3rd highest blitz rate in week 1, and Baker Mayfield had the 31st completion rate against the blitz last year. So they're going to send the house, and maybe he dumps it off a lot to Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, and that's good enough. But I think it's still volatile.
You're getting 130 points on it, so you're getting paid if he just doesn't throw an interception. So I like the upside there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to go over. I'll go over the interception. I think he's going to throw a pick.
Okay, I wasn't sure which way you're going with that. It sounded like you weren't talking swimmingly about him, but yeah, I mean it's Mayfield, and you get 70 points if he throws a pick, and all right, it's you kind of think he is, but the odds are also kind of saying he's going to throw.
Yeah, well, it's like Matt Rule said. Maybe they average 7.7 yards per play in the last 35 minutes again. Maybe they hang the banner again.
Matt Rule, man, we got to get this guy out of here, man. Like this guy.
Hey, John, we don't talk a lot about receiver quarterback matchups, but you did mention it, and I've heard several people talk about it already. Is that a real one? The Mike Evans Lattimore thing, is that real?
Yeah, the last 10 times they played, I think it's 10 games in a row. Lattimore literally shadows him. They just stick him on there. It's like how Rich mentioned Kyle Pitts last week. Like the NFC South is kind of just playing the same games over and over again.
Yeah, I mean that one, the Evans thing is fun because it's like a true rivalry. Like those dudes get at each other.
They don't like each other.
It's fun. Like we used to have those a lot, like, in the NFL. We don't have a lot of those anymore. And I guess because guys maybe change teams a little bit more and you just don't develop that. But Evans and Lattimore, like they're a true, they dog it out with each other.
I did think it was interesting. I was checking out the Derek Hardy's The Blitz, and the Tampa New Orleans game is projected to have the most plays for what it's worth, but it doesn't look like Brady is set up for success. And obviously the matchup's not good, missing some pieces on the line, missing some receivers. I assume Godwin's not going to go. There was a lot of second guessing on that, if him getting injured on the Sunday night game. He's got Devontae Adams with, I think, 8.5 catches as his projection, and the number is 6.5. That just seems a little bit too low, and I'm getting 95 points. It's basically a coin toss. So I'll take the over on Adams to get 7 catches. You like that, John?
I'll bet on a 42% target share. That's just
fine.
That's okay.
I mean, I don't know how sustainable 42% is, but he's gonna get his share, like for sure. That's a big boy number. All right. Favorite plays as far as quarterbacks we've not talked about. Yes, we can't talk about Carson Wentz or Jared Goff or Matt Ryan. Who else do we not? Oh, Trevor Lawrence. John, some of your favorite quarterbacks on this slate.
It's Trey Lance week, and we don't want to pay up for Kyler Murray, as we already talked about. So naturally, I think being contrarian leads me to want to pay up for Russell Wilson, and I don't think people will get there with him, and I don't think people will get there with his obvious double stack in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Unless we expect them to target running backs at the league's highest rate again, which I will not bank on. But after talking up, the one concern here is that after talking up pace of play throughout the offseason, Denver actually averaged the fourth longest time between plays in week one as a slow and methodical offense. But even then, the 16 points in the box score pretty much lies. It doesn't tell the entire story because the Broncos averaged 6.3 yards per play, averaged 45 yards per drive, and reached the red zone on 50% of their possessions. They just couldn't punch it in, due mostly to those 2 goal line fumbles, which was insane. It came on back-to-back possessions. But nonetheless, I think it's a good place, a good spot to pay up for Russell Wilson, and those 2 receivers tied each other with a 16.5% target share, 7 targets apiece in Sutton and Jeudy. And I don't even know if I need to run it back with Brandon Cooks. I maybe just play Russell Wilson and hope that they just stick it to them in a bounce back game.
John, is it going to be hard, like basically the way it was with Metcalf and Lockett? Is it the same deal with Sutton and Jeudy? Are we ever going to really know who is, I don't want to say clear and obvious, but like the preferable? I always had an issue figuring out, which I never seem to get those guys right. And it was only one of them. Like very rarely they both like crush. Just one guy would smash, the other guy would just sort of chill. How do you figure out, I know it's just 1 week, obviously, between Sutton and Jeudy, or it's just 51-49 and take your chances?
Well, Sutton was still the deep target guy. Sutton carried over his 19-yard depth of target as a downfield shot guy. I would have liked to seen him start sooner since he was basically non-existent in the first half. And, of course, Jerry Jeudy relied on Yak, which is maybe how they're going to scheme Jerry Jeudy anyways. It'd probably be case by case as game by game as which excels more. But in this game, I think both can get there.
Rich, some of your favorite quarterbacks?
Yeah, that particularly is interesting because no team had a lower wide receiver target share than Denver did in week one, even lower than the Packers. But all of the targets went to just those 2 guys. They had 15 total wide receiver targets and 14 went to Jeudy and Sutton, 7 apiece. Each had the same number of catches. And I was just looking at that the whole time like, this is the same exact shit we dealt with in Seattle. Like I was thinking, like, the whole time I'm just like, this is the exact same thing. Like, man, who's gonna score the damn touchdown this week? And like, I feel like I'm just so ready to get this wrong every week. But
yeah,
the fact that they had such a high target share, like, I was just thinking, I was like, this is the same exact shit, man. Like, damn it. But Daigle hit it all in the head. Like, yeah, like Russ is another guy who had a lot more points last week. Remember this main slate. We don't have Justin Herbert. We don't have Patrick Mahomes. We don't have Josh Allen. We don't have Jalen Hurts. We don't even have Kirk Cousins. It's thin at the top. I mean, Lamar is the most expensive quarterback, and like that's a game that is looking like an under city for sure, with the way Miami played in week 1 too, and the way Baltimore played. Like Miami was really, they were one of the slowest pace. They were the slowest paced offense in week 1. Tua didn't really play particularly well. Lamar hit big plays, but was completely inefficient. So, I mean, are you going to pay up for Lamar Jackson? We talked about Kyler. That's why Derek Carr stands out to me so much this week. Like, he's kind of like that tweener price. And then we're going to have to monitor some things, but like, what are people going to do with Trey Lance? Because this is a spot where you have the 49ers with not a big rest advantage, but a rest advantage over Seattle, who was the defense that we thought they would be. Like, they laid out all those stats, right? Like, the Seattle was that defense. They just had fluky things kind of swing their direction where they didn't give up touchdowns. How much does the monsoon kind of like factor in? And like, people just downright are out on Lance too. So like, does he kind of have some variance in terms of rostership this week where like people maybe now have to see it to go back to him? So, I mean, it's a very interesting. I'm very curious in that game how Kyle Shanahan handles things. Does he treat this environment as a spot to get Lance right and allow him to be aggressive, or does he try to hide him and feel like he needs to hide him? Because this is going to be a big reveal week, I think, for what Kyle Shanahan, how he really feels about Trey Lance this weekend.
It is.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so I've been under the assumption he will gather ownership, but you make a good point. And if that's the case, like, I do want to play Lance. The only reason I wasn't going to, because everyone else is going to play Lance. So if that isn't the case, we have to monitor it, like you said, then sure, I'm interested, because it is very volatile. I'll be very interested to see. And it is funny that everyone keeps pointing out, everyone only notes the monsoon for Lance, when honestly, Justin Fields was just fine in the monsoon. Now, Justin Fields only scrambles around and throws deep, literally all he does for his entire career, but Justin Fields was still just fine in the same weather.
The thing you're worried about is not the giving Lance a hall pass for the fourth quarter when that game, like, you couldn't really even see what was going on. It was the first half when he was only 6 of 10 and they had an 18-11, run to pass split. Like, we can't have the 49ers come out and do that, right? Like, just say, hey, we're home favorites on a short week. We're going to be able to handle business, and we're just going to run the football all game, like kind of like what the Eagles did towards the end of last season. Like, we don't want that offense. But I also believe that, like, the 49ers are in a spot here where, like, they can use this as a spot to get Lance going, like, get confidence, right? Like, have him. You don't think he's hearing the same stuff we hear? Like, there's no way. And today, like, every talk show has probably talked about, when is Garoppolo going to play? You don't think he's looking over his shoulder? Like, this is a spot. This is why I'm curious to see how Shanahan himself handles this game, because this is going to be a big tell for me on what he really thinks. Because this is a spot in this matchup where the 49ers, even if they don't have George Kittle, should be able to come out and play aggressively with Lance. And I'm really curious to see if they will.
That is exactly the point I was going to make. It makes a ton of sense, because, like, how much do they care? They want to shut the noise up of Garoppolo and all this. They lost in week 1 against the Bears, one of the worst teams in the league, we think. And obviously the field was a mess and whatever, that neutralizes stuff. Or are they just going to, get a comfortable lead and just let them hand the ball off and throw the ball 17 times and whatever? By the way, you want the Wednesday night ownership stuff, John? You referenced it a couple of times. It's more of a DK thing than a Fanduel thing. Yeah, looking at the prices, like Lance is 7.5 on Fanduel, which is basically the same as most other guys, but you're getting a massive discount on DK, which is why he's going to be popping, right? 5.7K over there. But and typically quarterback ownership doesn't get too high, too crazy. And this is Wednesday night, grain of salt. Number 1 as far as ownership is Stafford at 9%, 6.3K. Carr at 9%, 6.2K. And then Lance at 8%, 5.7K, for what it's worth.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. let's talk about running backs. Rich, you can set the floor as far as your the floor. The floor is yours. You can set the table. Let's do it that way. Sure, why not? Your favorite running backs.
I mean, Saquon, he was my favorite coming in all off season. I'm just gonna swerve into the confirmation bias. Looked like Bo Jackson out there last week, man. Like looked like he was a different athlete than some of the other guys playing on the field. What I really like about Saquon in particular is what Brian Daboll did for him. The Giants used 11 personnel on 85% of their running plays last week. It was the third highest rate in the league. And what that does is give you light boxes. Saquon had 11 carries against 6 or fewer defenders in the box. That was second in the NFL behind Jonathan Taylor. He had 155 of his rushing yards on those carries. Carolina gave up a ton of explosive runs to Browns running backs last week. And the other thing with Saquon is he comes with the insulation that he's the best receiver on the team now because they can't figure out what they're doing outside of Richie James leading the receiving unit in routes and targets. I mean, he led all running backs with 37% of the team targets. He ran a pass route on 75% of the dropbacks. That was third among all running backs. So you have that insulation. I have my RotoGrinders sub. I can look at the RotoGrinders projections, and he basically has the same floor and ceiling projection as Christian McCaffrey, and he's 1.6K cheaper than Christian McCaffrey is. To me, that's a no-brainer. I'll take my 1.6 in the pocket, even though people will maybe treat it like it's point chasing and you're buying low on the dip on Christian McCaffrey. But I'll go put that salary to somewhere else because, I mean, Saquon is the Giants' offense.
7.3K on DK. Again, he was one of the cheapest guys in week 1. Fanduel gave him a pretty big boost, actually, up to 8.
And he should have. On
Fanduel. Yeah, rightfully so. By the way, you look at as far as
he's a home favorite, too.
Yeah. As Smizzle would say, he's checking all the boxes this week for sure against Carolina. Henderson, I want to talk about the Rams. John, feel free to add as far as Barkley, but I think that one's a pretty clear play. Henderson separated himself from Akers in week 1. Is that what we're going to anticipate going forward? If that is the case, he's severely underpriced in a matchup where they should, thrash Atlanta pretty good. 10-point favorites there in a dome. Your take as far as Henderson, if you want to chime in on Barkley, by all means. Talk about Javonte Adams and his 17 receptions or whatever it was. Who else is interesting as far as running backs?
Interesting outside of the Rams running backs, I think Leonard Fournette, and maybe it was strictly a Falcons offense that threw the Saints defense off. Saints defense only allowed over 100 total rushing yards in 5 games last year. And the Falcons, as we know, still led the league in pistol formation. So it's a completely different offense, but Cordero Patterson's still to get over 120 rushing yards. And now we have Fournette coming in with his last 6 games, including week 1, the last 5 games where he was injured last year, has handled at least 74% of the team's running back carries in every single game. Rachaad White, 5 of his 6 touches didn't come until the fourth quarter when the Bucs were just nursing a 19-3 lead. 19-3 doesn't explain how much of a blowout that game was. And so, it is strictly Leonard Fournette's backfield. All the pass catching work over Rachaad White as well. And so I'm just fine leaning on Leonard Fournette as an overlooked workhorse. My only concern with Darrell Henderson is that he is cheap, but you could argue 5,700 isn't like a free square, even though we don't expect Cam Akers to be involved. We still expect Darrell Henderson to see his 18 touches and majority of the team's backfield touches. But we also don't want part of this offensive line. It's not Darrell Henderson's fault. He averaged 3.5 yards per carry. This offensive line is miserable. And so I still somewhat worry. Unless, of course, you're doing it strictly as a pivot off of Cooper Kupp or Allen Robinson.
Anything else of note? Somebody said they had a thought as far as Aaron Jones. Who did Aaron Jones Green Bay take? Somebody teased it earlier. I thought
well, they're on Sunday Night Football this week.
Oh, okay. That's why it's not on my list. Go. You feel free to finish the thought, but my bad.
No, I mean, yeah, I think Darrell Henderson at his pricing is interesting because, I would say, I probably just outright like Josh Jacobs more, and he's the same price on both sides. Like Daigle said, we go back to this isn't just a new thing for the Rams. The Rams were awful running the football last year. They were 31st in the NFL in EPA rushing in 2021. They lose 2 offensive linemen in the offseason. Andrew Whitworth retires. They lose Austin Corbett in free agency. In week 1, their center, Brian Allen, was injured. He will not play in this game. So it's just a really poor run out. And the Rams, still don't really throw to their running backs a lot. Although Henderson did have 5 catches. He didn't do anything with them, but you'll take the 5 catches on DK, even if they don't come with anything, you'll still take those. But yeah, I mean, how often will they bring Cam Akers back in? I don't know. It feels like a weird spot. Like I said, I feel a little bit more safer with Jacobs in the situation he's in. But I mean, I've played worse dudes than Darrell Henderson.
Any reason for panic early here, Rich, as far as Kamara?
I think a little. Obviously, when you go back to last year when they acquired Mark Ingram, his usage kind of waned a little bit. The Saints just have better players on offense now than they did a year ago, so maybe they don't need to get him involved so much. He blocked a lot. It was really weird. The Saints are a team, they got there in the end, but for 3 quarters, I was wondering what the hell they were doing. And it's only week 1, and it's only 1 quarter of week 1 and 3 quarters of week 1. But I have a hard time shaking the first 3 quarters of that game. You needed a hot run out against the Falcons to get there. When you're playing a team like Tampa Bay, how much am I expecting? How good am I expecting your offense to look? He's got the rib injury. Big picture, probably not so much, but short term, I don't really get great feelings right now.
They have Chris Olave, who was basically a deep threat at Ohio State, and yet they turned Jarvis Landry into Cortland Sutton instead. It was very, very odd.
Remember, they did nothing. Jameis through 3 quarters of that game had 2 passing first downs.
Yep.
It was rough. It was just a bad offense, and they get there at the end. So I mean, I don't know what to really stock. If it was them waking up, was it just a game script? It was. I need to see the Saints offense kind of congeal a little more before I start to really get a really good pulse for what's going on there. And the offensive line was bad, and that was one of the big bugaboos last year because the Falcons were dead last in the NFL in pressure rate a year ago. They don't really add any really significant pieces to that portion of the defense, and they lived in the backfield last week. And so that's kind of problematic too in a short term. This one game, I like the talent and the pieces there. We'll see what kind of happens, with Pete Carmichael. The weird thing is Pete Carmichael is familiar with Alvin Kamara. He knows what he's good at. And it was a really weird usage of a player. It was when we watched the Cowboys on Sunday night, did Kellen Moore ever watch Tony Pollard play football? What the hell was going on? I don't know, man. There were some weird things that happened in week 1. So we'll see if they become trends or not.
How bad do the Cowboys look in the next 2 months or so? How much does Rush taking the place of Dak?
Look how bad they looked with Dak.
Yeah, that's the other part.
Something was wrong. Something was wrong with Dak. I don't know if it was that ankle injury he had in camp, but even he couldn't put zip on the ball. Cooper Rush came in and it was immediately pressured on 35% of his dropbacks. Everyone looks at last year's start against Minnesota when he had 320 yards and multiple touchdowns, but that was a first string offensive line with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. This is Dennis Houston, Noah Brown, and CeeDee Lamb, who they can't even get accurate targets to, with Ezekiel Elliott, who looked good, but it doesn't matter because Ezekiel Elliott doesn't score you touchdowns. This is literally a college offense right now.
Yeah, they look. Again, you don't want to freak out over 1 week, but if you have a season long and you have CeeDee Lamb as one of your a late first round or early second, I guess he went early second, I suppose. You're not feeling very good, right, John?
You're not feeling good. No.
Yeah. It's not his fault. Summoning Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault, CD, but that's just a situation, we're just dealt with.
Micah Parsons looked good. I'll say that. He's still a beast.
Micah Parsons still good. I mean, the defense kind of was still all right. The defense showed up a little bit.
That's why I wonder about the Bucs offense, because I wonder if they catered to the Cowboys pass rush, or because of their own offensive line problems, is that the new Bucs offense? Because I could see both happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They didn't have to do really anything once they kind of got in control.
Leonard Fournette ran the ball to the left side of the line 17 times. They literally just ran at Trevon Diggs all night long, and they couldn't stop it.
John, what do you got for me as far as the running back breakdown for Denver? Williams and Gordon, 10-point favorites here against Houston. If we're seeing Denver up by 10 in the fourth quarter, who do we expect? Who's going to be hammering this game? Who's going to be closing it out? I wouldn't think Williams is going to catch 13 passes again, but everybody's kind of expecting him to take the leap over Gordon. Didn't necessarily happen last year, but what do you have as far as Williams versus Gordon? What was the breakdown last week?
Well, he did run a route on 61% of dropbacks, so they concertedly used him as their receiving back. But yes, it's kind of a question we're asking post week 1 in that, is this offense? Is this Nathaniel Hackett's offense? And again, I don't think so. That's why I'm higher on the receivers and Russell Wilson, thinking that's where the targets get concerted to, like Rich mentioned with Terry McLaurin, like taking away from either Curtis Samuel or Gibson weekly. On DK, though, it's a different conversation because not that we're in tight ends yet. I don't want to skip over wide receivers, but DK Alberto's 3,700. So like he makes sense as a stacking option there at least too. But I don't personally think that's how they want to run their offense. And so I would not go back to Javonte Williams myself.
Interesting. Alberto currently the highest projected owned player on DK for salary cap reasons, 3.7, about 15-16%. Let's jump the receivers. John, feel free to get us started. What receivers are worth talking about?
It's hard for me to kind of find some cheap options here, in particular on FanDuel. But I will say, as everyone talks about Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp, whether we play Trey Lance or not, I think Deebo Samuel's in a pretty sweet spot. We knew it was an ambiguous target tree to begin with now that we have Trey Lance under center. And so that's why everyone was pinning targets to Brandon Ayuk, maybe to lead the team in receiving, maybe George Kittle, who looks like right now, at least it's early on Wednesday, but could be out again since he missed Wednesday's practice. But instead we got 8 carries still as a wide back for Deebo Samuel, and more importantly, 8 targets. And remember, over the second half of the season when he was a wide back, he averaged less than 5 targets per game. So now he's getting everything. And like maybe the answer isn't just Jeff Wilson inside the 10-yard line or just outside the red zone too. Maybe it is just Deebo Samuel as more of a running back, still seeing a majority of these targets. It's certainly possible if Kittle's still out. And so I want to continue chasing that share, even though I don't think like the rushing touchdowns can sustain, but this usage is just totally different as long as George Kittle is still out.
Rich, feel free to add on or add some new players to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the guys that I'll be kind of really honed in on, and we'll see, I think he's going to get pretty popular as the week goes on, but DJ Moore, for sure. So the Giants are just a team, like I came into the season, like I'm going to target the Giants defense a lot this year. And I kind of wrote up Tannehill, like Daigle brought him up on the show last weekend, as being a guy that could get you there because this Giants defense, they're good. They've got a good front seven, but with Wink Martindale and their secondary, like it's what like the Ravens had to close last year. Like they're going to bring a lot of pressure and put a lot of these subpar talent in their secondary on an island. And we kind of saw that in week 1. I mean, Tennessee wide receivers averaged 9 yards per target. They averaged 14.1 yards per catch. It was still there for them. So, I mean, I still wanted to attack, this defense. And I know that it's with Baker Mayfield and maybe it's time we were like super popular, but this is kind of one of those flop lag guys, right? Like DJ Moore only had 6 targets last week. I'll definitely say that more weeks than not this season, he's going to out-target Robbie Anderson. So, and the Giants lost Aaron Robinson, like one of their like mediocre to bad players and not just outright bad players on the back end. So yeah, Denniston Moore Jr. is a guy that I'm probably going to be honed in on, early in the week until like we see if he gets steamed up too far.
I'll be curious to see his ownership if we get Tyler Boyd, because I wonder if T. Higgins gets ruled out, how much he soaks up in that high 5K, 6K range, since that's where DJ Moore's kind of living right now.
Rich, you were talking about like Hurts running bad last week. For the Bengals, Jamar Chase left 4 touchdowns on the field or something like that.
To be fair though, like in the space-time continuum, if Zach Taylor challenges the first one, the other plays don't happen. So and to be fair, after the one-handed with the near one-handed one, he scored still after that. So I mean, I get that, when you count the individual plays, but those 3 almost touchdowns were really still 1 touchdown.
You just went all Gray Sports Almanac, busting out the 1.21 gigawatts. I appreciate it, though. You're right. You make a fair point.
I watch a lot of Rick and Morty, so I've been doing, so we're trying to, factor in the multiverse here, different kind of, time and where everything's happened. If Zach Taylor just challenges the first one, the Bengals probably win the game in regulation.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. Nothing happens after that.
Yeah. My Survivor teams would have appreciated that. But Man, I went over across the board. I don't know if you guys did the Survivor leagues at all. I was in a winners league and a losers league. I lost them all.
Yeah, I'm in a losers one, and I just took the Cardinals. I just burned my Cardinals one week 1.
That's the smart move. Just like I don't like playing teams on the road week 1, but like that was like, and then like now this week you got several teams like 10-point favorites, and you can coast again theoretically. And like you get to play. I'm on the sidelines. I'm itching. I need to find a new league. Send me a DM, somebody. There's a new league firing.
Like people, those are fun because typically most people get bounced early and they just start a new one.
Yeah, I'm available. I'm willing to play. Anybody else as far as receiver? You mentioned that Miami-Baltimore game, and that's another one on Cardi. He's got the slowest, like the least amount of plays in that game.
That game's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, but like Hill needs one play, maybe two, right? I think it's interesting. And I don't know for tournaments. I know it's just kind of a cop out. We saw can't guard Mike Thomas came back with 2 touchdowns last week. Good for him. He's still pretty cheap too. Did he impress you enough, Rich, to throw him in the pool there against Tampa?
Maybe that's another game I expect to be low scoring, like we've hinted at a few times. And like I said, the Saints, the fact that they just needed that pure run out in the fourth quarter still gives me. Like Michael Thomas had 1 catch through 3 quarters.
Yeah.
So like what Saints are the real Saints? And I still have a hard time. I don't have a problem with it. Like I'm not here to talk anyone out of playing Michael Thomas. I get to see early on like he's not like a priority right now for like what I'm looking at. But things could change the next few days. I would say like that Rams situation we didn't talk about a little bit because obviously Cooper Kupp's really expensive on this slate. There are ways to get to him. Cooper Kupp now has 15 or more PPR points in 18 straight games played. It's 2 shy of the record for a non-quarterback. Emmitt Smith did it in his career. And he's going against this Atlanta team that's still like where you want to attack them is in the inside. I mean, AJ Terrell gave up those 2 touchdowns, but like him and Casey Hayward are still the 2 best parts of that defense. That's where Allen Robinson's still going to be. I mean, they allowed 9 catches for 110 yards to Saints wide receivers in the slot. And if the Stafford elbow thing is real, and we'll see if it gets any better. But for 1 week, it was real. And if the elbow is going to be a thing that applies maintenance and is a problem throughout the year, who's the only guy that's going to survive that? It's the slot receiver. It's not going to be the perimeter wide. It's not going to be the perimeter plays and the guys that run, deeper routes, these deep crossers and stuff. Like it's going to be Cooper Kupp. Let's not find more reasons to talk ourselves out of Cooper Kupp. Basically, is what I'm saying. But that price that both sites dropped on Allen Robinson feels like a trap.
What do you have the ownership report at right now, early on a Wednesday, Dean, between Kupp, Adams, and Allen Robinson? Because that's kind of the game we're playing here. Since if you're spending up for one, you do have a choice between Kupp and Adams.
All right, you're saying Kupp, Adams, and Robinson?
Yeah, since Kupp is the pivot off Robinson, assuming Robinson gets steamed at a lower salary, and then people also have the decision with so many running backs on the board to pay up for one receiver between Kupp and Adams.
Well, on FanDuel, he probably gets more than DK because it's more touchdown based, and they dropped him to like 5'7". Like whereas DK, he's 5'5", but like there's a bunch of surrounding guys like around 5'5". So
and you already mentioned DJ Moore as one of them, yeah.
I don't have a helpful answer for you. On DraftKings, we have Kupp, Adams, and Robinson all at 12%.
Okay.
Like give or take a few percentage points, but that's
it's Wednesday. It's okay.
Yeah, so maybe they're hedging a little bit too. I have no idea. And obviously, the closer we get to lock, the more refined this stuff.
I mean, there is no way you can get me to play Allen Robinson over DJ Moore. There's just absolutely no way.
And you got a ready-made run back too with Moore and Barkley. I know Barkley's going to be popular, obviously, but like if you want to run back with Barkley, Moore seems to be the clear and obvious guy as well. If you want to chase Robinson, I get Robbie Anderson. I guess you can, but I'm with you. I'm much more likely to just play Moore and bet on I'm not betting on another 70-yard touchdown for Robbie Anderson. I suppose it's possible. It seems unlikely for me. And I was also victory lapping. I'm just going to wait and see what Mike Thomas does, and then he scores 2 touchdowns in the second half. I think it was he wasn't doing much, and then out of nowhere it's like both
on AJ Terrell too.
Yeah, I'm told he was really. I mean, my understanding. I'm not an X's and O's like best corners in the league, but I'm told he's really, really good.
I mean, it's not like he got like shadow realmed or anything. Like they threw a jump ball and he caught it.
Yeah.
You got anything else, John, as far as receivers? You want to talk some tight ends? I know you kind of You talked about Albert O. Kyle Pitts. I'm told he's supposed to be good, and everybody expecting that big lead.
Just 18 weeks of having the same Kyle Pitts conversation. Let's do it for 19.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I got the matchup last week being kind of tough, and maybe I don't know what the matchup was like versus the Rams. I feel like that's a tough one as well. Do you happen to have that, Rich? Is there a reason for concern for Pitts?
I mean, the concern with Kyle Pitts is that Arthur Smith has no clue how to get him like in any advantageous situation. And this is 17 out of 18 games he's played, because in one game in London, they figured it out. And the Jets guarded him with a defensive end, and that's how he scored his one touchdown. That's Kyle Pitts' one touchdown in his career, is a defensive end was guarding him. But we see something that happens with Justin Jefferson, right? Like on Sunday. And this is, we talk about rational coaching, and like it's so hard to bank on. Justin Jefferson is literally catching passes where like there's not even a guy on the TV screen. He put a move on a ghost defender. He thought he had to juke someone, and there was no one within 15 yards of him. That's what coaching does, rational coaching. We see it with Cooper Kupp. You see it with Kevin O'Connell. Arthur Smith continuously gets Kyle Pitts in situations where he's guarded by like elite defensive backs. It happened again last week. Marshawn Lattimore was on Kyle Pitts the entire game and boxed him. It's continuously week in and week out. So is he going to be running routes against guys like, Jalen Ramsey in the star position, or like getting routes on Bobby Wagner? Like, how can we put any faith in Arthur Smith scheming this guy in advantageous spots when he literally hasn't done it? He hasn't done it for now. We have a running sample of this shit happening. Like, it's this. We have the same conversation. Look at the routes Kyle Pitts ran. Look at his target share. Look at his ADOT. Cool. Where are my fantasy points? Where are my fantasy points?
And he's really cheap this week, by the way. And also no Kelsey. You kind of ran down a lot of the players that are not going to be on the main slate. No Goddard as well. Tight end just much thinner.
It's only Andrews. Like, it's really only Andrews to pay up. And if you don't pay up for Andrews, that's why I make the Russell Wilson argument game theory wise, because if we have no issues fading Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, like there's only one other quarterback to pay up for. Otherwise you're paying down. And we talked about the guys to pay down for. At tight end, like that's the same thing pretty much, where sure, you can probably pay up for Darren Waller if you think and bring them along with Carr. But also, like you said, right now you have Derek Carr as the second highest roster quarterback. I don't know who will bring along Carr with them, but it's logical. And then you could play Kupp instead. So already you can see how that's chalky. Mm-hmm. The only other thing is, I think on DraftKings, everyone's going to pay down for Juwan Johnson, logically, right? Like by now it's probably caught steam that he's the one, not Taysom Hill, who ran 33 routes on Jameis Winston's 42 dropbacks. And so at the stone minimum, like that's the player you play, and thus you can then spend up for all these expensive top tier players.
2.5K, you got all those stone minimum plays. I did have one lineup with Likely last week, who I believe at 0, right? He put up a 0. He did drop a pass. I saw him, he was targeted once. A lot of hype in the preseason on Isaiah Likely, but
listen, you need the tight end whisperer Tyler Huntley in the game.
Yes. On FanDuel too, I could maybe play Tyler Higbee. He's somewhat touchdown or bust, but we saw last year after his career high in routes per drop or routes on Stafford's drop back his first year without Gerald Everett, he basically just got out there again for the same thing. A route on 92% of dropbacks. Also no Van Jefferson for this game as well. So pretty much in the same position that allowed him to have, I think it's a good spot for Higbee on FanDuel in particular.
5.3K, pretty good price. Yeah. Do you have a favorite tight end, John? Or it's, again, obviously, if you have all the salary in the world, I think you go Andrews. You consider Waller maybe, but maybe this isn't the spot to save salary as we're talking about. Maybe, I mean, it's a spend all the way up. Maybe it's not the best money spent, and maybe the opportunity cost won't be very high at tight end. And typically, a lot of times it isn't, especially when Kelsey's not on the slate. So, all things considered, your favorite tight end on a Wednesday night?
Josh Gillum also helped me out. 11 targets. That's the number I was looking for. A 26% target share for Tyler Higbee as I stumbled there at the end. No favorite, honestly, because I don't think I'm playing Andrews. And so right now on Wednesday, I'm still kind of teetering about what to do at tight end. At least last week, I had more confidence in the players I was either spending up or down for, knowing I wanted to get to Kelsey or go all the way down to Mo Alley Cox and some other cheap options. This week, I think it's genuinely across the board. Like I have no idea just yet.
Yeah, Rich, the thing is, if you decide I don't want Pitts and I see in chat, and I haven't acknowledged the chat in a while, my bad. We appreciate y'all watching us live here on the old YouTube. Hopefully you're hitting that like button, you're subscribing, getting locking in so you know when all our shows are going down. Obviously, we take you guys up the lock on Sunday mornings, shows all throughout the week, showdown slate content, all the good stuff. In chat, they're talking about I want no part. I have no interest in playing me some Pitts. Well, okay, let's say we say that, Rich. You can't just submit a lineup without a tight end. None of the options are great, so you can't just say I don't want that guy. You got to pick somebody too. Who are we picking?
Yeah, I mean, the Pitts thing's literally the definition of insanity. And I get it. I talked about this last week too, when everyone was going to play him. On FanDuel or our DraftKings, Kyle Pitts is 5.4. Okay. Darren Waller's 5.6. To me, it's no brainer. I'm going to play Darren Waller, especially at half the ownership. They're absolute against the Rams. What's the Falcons team total right now? It's got to be 17 points.
I wrote it down pre-show. It is 18. Yeah.
And I'm absolutely going to play Darren Waller. Now, Darren Waller, I think, is over $1,000 more on FanDuel. So maybe there's a little gap there, but he's also, I think, $1,000 cheaper than Andrews. So there's a gap. So maybe he gets overlooked because if you're just going to have salary, you pay up for Andrews. I think Waller's just in a better spot than Andrews this weekend. An outright better spot. Game situation, everything is just better. So, I like him a lot more if you're going to pay up. I think on FanDuel, because Daigle hit the DraftKings guys. You're going to play Alberto if you're punting down. You can even go all the way down to Juwan Johnson for 2.5 and just hopefully you run into a big play, right? On FanDuel, I still am willing to go back to, I think, David Njoku at 4.9. It was a terrible spot for him last week. I wrote it up in the worksheet that I was off on him. It was a terrible matchup against Carolina. They bodied tight ends last year. They've got really athletic linebackers and safeties, but he's going to be going against the Jets this week, or the inverse. They got really good boundary cornerback play and their safety play isn't good. So, I am willing to kind of go back there because on FanDuel, I don't care about catches. Just please, for the love of God, someone catch a touchdown. And at 4.9, I think that there's worth squeezing, on him there. But I'm probably going to play Waller, and then, I'm really just focused on Waller right now. I got nothing else right now for you guys on tight ends. They're all terrible.
It's an ugly slate. It's an ugly tight end slate.
I'm trying to reach for another take, but I got nothing.
That's why Tyler Higbee stumped me, Rich, because that was the only other one I had.
And it seems highly unlikely that Kittle's going to come back. I don't believe he practiced on a Wednesday, and it seems like he's got a groin. And let's give him it's Seattle. We're 10-point favorites. It's not happening, right? Kittle's. I don't think he's officially ruled out. I don't think so.
But you're not going to play him if he plays.
Okay. Well, I guess that's fair enough. I guess not. Theoretically, but I'm just looking for
we ran through that 49er situation, the amount of variance that could happen in that game. And for a guy like George Kittle, who is inherently variant on his own self and is going to be playing potentially limited or hurt,
you don't get any fantasy points for pancakes. I don't think he's a good blocker right here, but that doesn't do us any good, unfortunately. That's going to do it. And that's the show. We appreciate y'all tuning in again in the chat, or not in the chat. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I promised before 1 week free of RotoGrinders Premium in the comment section, not in the chat comment section, but the comment section on the video. Give me the hottest take, the hottest, most accurate take. Include your Twitter handle or some way for me to contact if you happen to make it. I want to be able to tell you and let you know, hook you up with some RG Premium. Rich, everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows. Everybody follows you on Twitter. Lord Reeves, you got that Zach Morris avatar, but just in case, tell them where they can find you on Twitter, on all the things, where they can find you at Sharp Football Analysis. Well, there you go. I just did it for you, but go ahead. Tell people again.
You did a great job at Lord Reeves on Twitter, Sharp Football Analysis. The weekly worksheet is where I'm breaking down kind of all of these games with intense write-ups. If you don't have a sub, I also put out 2 games for free every week as well, where we talk about a lot of this, nitty-gritty type things that we bring up on the show.
John, the same deal. And if you want to close, you want to finish strong, you have a hot take, you got your favorite stack, something that's going to win the millions this week, feel free to give it to the people or just keep it for yourself, either way. But also let them know where they can find you around all the things.
My hot take is that we're going to go an hour and a half for the people every single week for the rest of the year. Also, you can find me at 4for4.com. You can use the promo code Daigle10. The first waiver wire is up. FFPC waivers are closing, but remember, we still have a Saturday waivers run that we get to sneak those last-minute players in, and I write player notes on basically everyone that I think you should have an eye on. So Daigle 10 there. Also, the free BetSperts app where I log my Thursday night bets at completely free. I went 1-1 last week. Nothing to be excited about, but I will log them again anyhow this upcoming Thursday.
Hey, that's not 0-2.
It's not 0-2.
If the line is an hour next week, smash the over. My time management is like the Denver Broncos, apparently. Poor job by me. We'll do better. We'll make it more concise.
What else are we going to do on a Wednesday night? We're going to talk football with our friends. That's okay.
There you go. I mean, yeah, please. I tend to ramble, and feel free to, we can move on. They cut me off, but the people like it. If they're still sticking around, I think they're sticking around. I see enough people lurking.
You said last week got a ton of views, so yeah, they're sticking around.
Yeah, it was a well viewed show. Hopefully, we keep that audience, this week and going forward. We do appreciate the support. We appreciate producer Steve. Producer Steve stepping in. Appreciate your producing. Sorry about your Mets tonight. Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis. John Daigle, 4 for 4. BetSperts. I was Dean from RotoGrinders. This was the NFL Pick 6 show. Thanks for watching. We're out of here. Over.